I have a number of catch-up reviews to cover over the next few weeks, and in the first of these I want to take a look at the first Hornby Class 37 I've ever reviewed on this channel, and this is the Railroad Plus model in the Cullis Rail livery. So let's take a closer look. Hi, thanks for joining today's review. We'll kick off with a short unboxing, and as part of that we'll also open up the model. We'll follow that up with a close-up views, followed by our brief running session, before getting into our summary, scoring and final recommendations. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to do a quick unboxing of this Cullis Freight Class 37 from Hornby. Now, it says TTS digital sound on the outside, but this is actually the version that has the TTS sound removed. Now, I will put in some sound for the running session. I would have loved to have used a TXS decoder, but there still isn't a profile for the Class 37 yet, so I might look at another decoder for that. I'm not sure if I actually have a TTS decoder, but I'll find I do have an economy, a Soundtrax economy decoder, which I can put an adapter in for that. So we'll have sound when we do the running session. So let's get this guy out of the box. Got this for the pricely sum of £85 from Hattons. If you get the DC or the TTS fitted version, that does come in usually about £25–30 more. It's not bad value actually, considering it's including sound. So I like this livery, which was attracted to me to this, and I haven't tested one of these Class 37s from Hornby at all actually. I don't think I've ever covered one of these in the channel. Obviously a low-cost model. So let's take this guy out and we'll take a look at him quickly. And it's relatively light, I guess but that's to be expected. I did a Class 47 review again with a Cullis Freight livery actually a while back, and it's probably a similar kind of weight. Now there's no lighting here unfortunately, so it's going to be pretty basic from a kind of feature perspective, and it's everything is pretty well molded. These handrails actually look quite good even though they're just painted, and the kick step there and everything is nicely painted actually, so that from a detail finish perspective, a livery perspective, it's actually not bad for what it is. The lines there are pretty sharp. There's no a little bit of fuzziness there. Now we will do the usual close-up, and you've got this outer line and they molded on the windscreen there, so the wipers are just molded, so it's pretty basic in that area. This is no Acura scale Class 37, that's for sure, or Bachmann, but it's probably quite passable, put it that way, for what it is. And the roof is obviously, there's no fan or anything in there. We've got the horns. It's all fine, you know. I mean, for what it is, it's fine. I don't have a major issue with it, and you know, I think there's a place for models like this, and so, you know, I don't like to scorn them. You know, if you want to get the other types of models, a little bit of scuffing there, I'm going to clean that off, and there's a little bit of roughness there. So the finish isn't perfect, but again, I don't think any of that is fatal, and if you were going to do a bit of weathering, then there wouldn't be a problem either. So I was saying DCC fitted, but it's not. No, I'm just looking at this here. Is there a screw missing there? There's a hole there. Might discover that in due course. It does look to have all-wheel pickup, which these locomotives have in recent times, and I think that's a very good thing, and it has improved the running performance of these locomotives from the perspective of, you know, not getting any brownout from a power perspective going over point work or things like that. So I think that's to be commended. Now I'm just looking at the sprung wheels. They don't connect all the time. Looks like those springs aren't making a proper contact. I don't know if you can see that on the camera there. The springs touch one of the wheels, but they don't touch the two at the same time. They kind of do on that one. That's not great. It does have traction tires, so I'm going to have to actually do a little bit of adjustment on these guys because the springs aren't making contact with both wheels at the same time, so they're not going to have the desired effect. So that's a little bit of a negative. It's got them pockets either end, which is the standard kind of couplers installed, which is fine. You don't get any detailing kit, right? So you're not going to get anything like snow plows or any added detail. So unfortunately, that's the case. And it would be nice to get snow plows with these, actually. I do like to fit them on the 37s. There isn't any driver fitted, but usually it's pretty easy to add a driver to these models. So it is basic. It's kind of what I'd expect. I didn't expect not having the contacts though there. That's something that I'm going to have to do a little bit of work on. So that's a letdown over other models. So I think let's take this guy apart. I guess let's do that. Okay, so we just nearly got this off. There we go. These guys are very handy for taking bodies off, actually. Wow, that's pretty basic. That's as basic as you're going to get for the internals. It does mean there's kind of a slight imbalance in weight as well. I don't see any weight in there. There's weight here, all right. So that's made out of metal. So that's what's giving the weight. But usually there might be a weight down there. But it's still a little bit unbalanced weight-wise because this is obviously significantly heavier on this side. So you could definitely do with adding some weight here and maybe a speaker or something like that. That's where we're putting our speaker, or obviously the speaker could go here. So I'll take a look at that in due course, but it is pretty basic. And I guess the other point about this is that we won't be adding a driver because there's no seats. No, that's kind of disappointing. And yeah, that really is basic, very basic. So there's no seats, so there's going to be no driver unless you put something together, mock something together. All right. Yeah, that's about as basic as it gets, I guess. So, all right, I'm going to search out a decoder for this, and I've got a couple of network rail carriages we can run this with. So we'll do a brief running session as well, and I will do the close-ups. It is what it is, I guess. And let's see how she performs in the track. I think I'll need to make adjustments here to make sure the pickups are okay. It's actually another thing that's no harm with locomotives like this. And as I look at the wheels, they can have a little bit of grime on them from the manufacturing process. They can take that from the factory, so it's no harm actually to give them a bit of a clean, as you know, ahead of time, maybe even before you start running it in. That's probably no harm to do that now. So I'll actually look at doing a bit of a clean on these wheels and get it in shape before I run it in and go any further with it. Okay, that's it. It's basic as they come, I guess. So it'll kind of depend now on how she performs. All right, let's move on to the close-up views. Before we finish this section, I want to show you the sound I've added to this model for the running session. I'm using a 21-pin Soundtrax Economy UK diesel decoder with a 21-pin to 8-pin converter to allow me to mount it on the model. I've also fitted a decent EM1 speaker with connectors connected to the adapter board. I was hoping to use an 8-pin TXS decoder, but the lack of a Class 37 profile right now means that's not a runner for today, unfortunately. Okay, so let's get into the close-up view. So we're doing a side-on view here of the model, and I think in general the livery here is quite good, and even the kind of basic level of detail, those handrails look pretty good on the door there, the kick plates. You know, for what it is, I think the livery and appearance are done pretty good. You know, there's reasonably good moulding on the bogies there. You've got the tanks, the underbody tanks there. You know, the Cullis Rail Freight naming, branding's coming out pretty good there. The lines are pretty clean, a little bit of fuzziness in a couple of areas. Again, those good door handles, numbering is fine. The lining across the top there, the roof detail, it's all molded, but it's good. And you've got the horns, again, they're molded, but they're fine. So, for what it is, I think this livery and appearance is pretty decent. And, it actually looks reasonably good, probably certainly better than the model actually is, I would say. Here we're doing the 360 view, and again, giving you a good overall view of the model. I think one thing I don't kind of like is the coupler hooks and the pockets. They do protrude quite a bit, so they do kind of stick out. So I've taken off for the running session. I took out the front coupler there. It would have been nice if there was something like a snowplow included as a detailing part. That would have probably been nice to include that. There really is nothing else, and I guess, while on the outer view, this model looks pretty good. There is no cab in there at all. There's no cab, no seats. So the possibility of adding a driver, the possibility of adding a cab light, for example, is basically taken off the table, which is kind of disappointing. Even on a model like this, I have looked to add those things in the past on models like this. But its all-round appearance, as I say, isn't bad, and we'll see it on the track now in a little while, and it does look pretty good. So here in the running session, we're going to be running with that Soundtrack's sound decoder with a pretty good speaker installed. So we'll get underway now. A little bit rough starting off. From a sound perspective, the movement is actually reasonably okay, but it's kind of a roughness in the engine, and you do hear that a couple of times. I heard that through the running session, and maybe with some additional running that might actually wear out of it. So this has been running for about an hour. Does run well. I didn't have any stalling over point work. We're running under radius 2 curves right now. Actually, we're on the inner one of my circuits, and no problems there. It's got a lot of point work on it, a lot of diamonds on this inner circuit, and if there was going to be a problem, we would have seen it on that particular circuit. So it does run well from that perspective. No stalling, and it is pretty good. It does actually run on a radius 1 as well, but unfortunately your coaches won't run on a radius 1, or most of the coaches won't. Now we've shifted off to the radius 3 circuit now, so we're going to run here, and we'll increase the speed on this circuit, and we'll bring it right up to its maximum speed, so we get a feel for that. And it's pretty good. It's a pretty clean runner at these sorts of speeds. And you're not getting any funny engine sounds now. It kind of loosens out, and the only sounds you're getting now are from the decoder itself and just the normal track sounds that you'd get. So it's pretty decent, and it looks pretty decent. It would be nice if there was a snowplow, as I said already. That would kind of improve the appearance, but it's not bad. It's a good solid runner for what it is, and we're putting it through its paces now. We're to crank it right up to the top speed here. And it is fairly decent. Now, I haven't loaded it with many wagons, obviously. We're just running with 3 coaches here. It is a light locomotive, so I think if you were going to run it with any sort of load, you would need to start adding some weight to the locomotive itself. We're putting the brakes on now, so we're going to bring it to a halt on the next run. But I found it actually quite a fun locomotive to run with, and kind of looks the part on the track. Put it with some appropriate rolling stock, and it looks actually okay. And if you add a little bit of weathering, for example, that would be no harm as well. But it is just those little niggles. No cab, no ability to add a driver. It's just unfortunate. The low speed coming to a halt here I found it pretty clean, and we come in at a reasonable speed and we stop. So overall, a very satisfactory running session. So for what it is, it's a pretty good runner. Okay, so let's look at the summary. We've been looking at the Hornby R30041. It's a Class 37 in the Cullis Rail Freight livery. 2 versions available. One has got TTS included, pre-fitted. The version I was looking at here actually excludes TTS. Got all-wheel pickup and 2-axle drive with traction tires. Comes with a 5-pole skew-wound motor, and that does give it some pretty good performance on the track, I think. It comes 8-pin DCC ready for the non-TTS version, and you can add the R8102 TTS sound option, or that option will be pre-fitted if you get the TTS version from the get-go. There's no Class 37 TXS profile at the moment, at the point of this review. The minimum radius curves are radius 2, though I did run this fine on radius 1. It's very tolerant, and I think that kind of goes back to its ancestry. There are no extra features. I think it's important to note that. Top scale speed was 85 miles per hour, and that was drawing 130 milliamps at 100% power on the controller, and that was with 3 coaches. It is a very light 208 grams, so I think if you were going to start loading this up with any sort of decent sized rakes, you're probably going to need to add a little bit more weight to the body. The selling price with sound is typically between 109 and 121 pounds, and without sound, or with sound removed, it's 85 pounds, which is what I actually paid, and that's as of June 2023. So let's look at the scoring. I'm giving it a 7 actually on the performance. I think the running performance overall is pretty good, though I didn't do any real load tests with this particular locomotive, and as I said, there is that point that it is extremely light. It does run with very little power consumption. 130 milliamps is relatively low, and it can do a decent speed at that. So I think there is potential to run reasonable rakes, but this is more obviously somebody on a smaller layout with smaller rakes would be probably the type of customer for this particular locomotive. What it does pretty well. A little bit noisy at times at startup and when it's slowing down, which doesn't really affect the motion of the locomotive, but it's just you hear this kind of grinding noise a little bit. And now that may wear out over time. The appearance and detail I'm giving is a 6. There really isn't much detail here. I think that's kind of important. You've probably seen that. The livery is fine, and its appearance on the track is fine, but there isn't really any sort of significant detail going on, so that's just noting that. And again, that's down to the nature of the model. Extras and variants, really all we have is variants in different other liveries that basically use this same motor and configuration for their Class 37. There are no extras, and there isn't even a basic cab area with seating for a driver. The build quality I'm giving as a 7. A couple of little items, but nothing fatal, I would say. And again, it's kind of in the sort of range of this class of locomotive. And then the packaging and documentation, it's adequate for what it is. So it wouldn't be adequate for other models of locomotives that are more expensive, more complex, but for this, it is pretty adequate. And then the price at 85, I'm putting it as a 7 out of 10. If you get the TTS sound included, it's probably more maybe of a 7.5. It's a little bit slightly better value because you're getting the sound, the extra sound for, potentially 25 pounds extra. So, if you pick it up at about 110 pounds, so that's not bad to pick up a locomotive like this with sound for 110 pounds. So a little bit extra value if you get the sound version of it. So overall, it's giving scores that wouldn't appear to be very large, 6.5, 6.4, which have to be taken again into the context of the particular type of locomotive, the class and the actual pricing that for this particular locomotive. It's not comparing itself with a Bachmann or an Acura Scale 37, it just isn't. So you have to compare it slightly differently. So the scoring is not catastrophic, even though it would be low for those other types of locomotives. If they were to score in this kind of range, they wouldn't be recommended if they did. But this one, given its price point in the market, I think these scores aren't, they're not the worst. They could be a little bit better though, and maybe just talk about that in the summary. So this Railroad Plus Class 37 from Hornby comes in a decent rendition of the Cullis Rail Freight livery. But after that, it's about as basic a model as you'll get. Describing it as a plus model is very much marketing, with no lighting at all, and not even a basic cab area to mount a driver and perhaps add a cab light. This model is very much a throwback to its 40-year-old Lima ancestors. It's a pretty decent runner for a model in this price range, despite the connection issues on some of the pickups, and it does look pretty good on the track. At £110 including sound from many vendors, and £85 without sound, it's very much in the low-cost bracket. If it had even a basic headlight and a basic cab for the same price, I would have put this in a recommended category. So without them, I still believe this Hornby Class 37 is worth considering if you're on a budget, and if you're not bothered about Bluetooth control but are running on DCC, the TTS version for typically £110 represents pretty decent value as well. So that's my thoughts on this Railroad Plus Class 37 from Hornby. It's not a disaster by any means, but it's basic in the extreme, and even for £85 I would have expected a little bit more. If you have any recent Hornby Railroad Class 37 models, let me know in the comments on how they've worked out for you, as well as your thoughts on this particular model. So this is the first of 5 videos on my summertime purchases. I'll cover the remainder over the coming weeks, before we likely see the Accurascale Mark IIB coaches beginning to land. So thanks for joining today. Hope to see you on the next one. And in the meantime, take care and happy modelling.